My name is Lily, and at 28 years old, my family told me to get out in the middle of Christmas dinner. We've all decided it's time for you to go, my brother said, his tone rehearsed and cold. And don't bother coming back. There was still cranberry sauce on my plate. Mark, my brother's live-in girlfriend who treated our home like a complimentary bed and breakfast, was in the middle of scooping up a second helping of stuffing when it happened. My spoon was still in my hand. Jake had just finished some long story about how he single-handedly saved the meal by finding the last can of gravy in the state, even though I was the one who made it from scratch. And then he dropped the bomb. The lie, like he'd been waiting all night for the perfect moment to light the fuse. We've all decided it's time for you to go, he stated, drinking his beer like he was on some reality show about dysfunctional families. I blinked. My dad studied his napkin. My mom suddenly found a spot on the wall incredibly interesting. Mark, dear, oblivious Mark, looked deeply concerned about the integrity of a green bean. So I asked, quietly, what did you say? And Jake repeated it, slower. As if I was hard of hearing. We think it's best if you move on. For good. Nobody objected. Nobody said, whoa, that's not how we said it. Because they had clearly said it. All of them. Together. I suppose I'm not required for family votes anymore. I looked at each of them. My dad's folded hands. My mom's tight smile. Jake, smug in a crisp button-down that would have looked handsome on anyone who wasn't a traitor. And Mark, trying to hide behind his dinner plate. Something inside me broke open, but instead of crumbling, I reached into the pocket of my cardigan. I'd brought it down just before we sat down. Almost left it on my nightstand. I had planned to wait until we were having coffee. I'd even practiced a little thing to say, something simple but meaningful. But no. I pulled out the envelope. It was heavy, off-white. I'd sealed it with a red wax stamp, like some kind of romantic fool. I held it up. All right then, I said, smiling a smile that didn't reach my eyes. I guess you won't be needing this after all. And I tore it right down the middle. There was a perfect, silent moment where nobody breathed. Just the crisp sound of paper ripping. A small, soft noise for such a huge thing. Then I let the pieces fall onto the table, right next to the basket of rolls. I walked around the table, took my jacket from the hook by the stairs, and started up. It took about 3 seconds before Jake yelled, "Lily, wait." What was that? But I was already gone. I was halfway up the stairs, past the wall of school portraits where I'm always in the back row, past the formal family photo where my face is always slightly turned away. I started grabbing things. A duffel bag, my charger, my journal, a pair of boots. I didn't pack neatly, just threw things in a frantic, angry haze. Down below, I could hear the voices climbing. Jake was panicking. My mom's voice was saying something about drama, and why now? My dad finally spoke, I think. Or maybe it was Mark. It was hard to tell over the sound of my own heart pounding in my ears. I zipped the bag, hoisted it onto my shoulder, and took one last look at my room. The narrow bed. The chip in the paint from when I bumped it moving the desk. The shelf that still held my 5th grade science fair ribbon, even though no one ever brought it up again after Jake won the state competition the next year. I didn't say a word. I walked back down the stairs slowly, listening to the beautiful chaos of their regret. When I passed the dining room, I didn't stop. I didn't look. I didn't smirk. I just opened the front door, stepped into the cold, and closed it behind me. They didn't chase me. Not right then, but they would. They'd figure it out. They'd realize what they had just lost. It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a life-changing offer. It's a strange feeling, packing a bag in the house you grew up in like you're a burglar. It's worse when you realize nobody is stopping you, nobody is asking where you'll sleep, they're just letting you walk away. It wasn't always this bad. Okay, maybe it was, But I didn't see the full picture until I was older and realized most people's families don't make them feel like a supporting character in someone else's story. Jake was the golden boy from the moment he could throw a ball. It was like the spotlight just naturally found him. Relatives would joke about it at holidays. "You'd better keep up with this one," they'd say, clapping him on the shoulder while I sat off to the side, quiet and largely invisible, like the family pet. And to be fair, Jake was magnetic. He had that easy, winning charm that made adults want to help him. Coaches praised him. Neighbors knew his name. He got scholarships for just showing up. I got a participant medal in a track meet once and had to share it with 5 other kids. Our dad treated Jake like a protege, a younger version of himself he could finally mold correctly. They'd go to games together, talk in the garage about guy things. While I loaded the dishwasher, I once heard my dad say, "You're the one who really gets it," to Jake. I was 14, standing right there. Our mom mostly stayed out of it. I think she believed that not picking a side meant she was being fair. As long as the house was quiet and everyone was fed, she considered the job done. And then there was Uncle Carl. He wasn't a real uncle. He was our dad's former boss and mentor. He was old guard. The kind of wealth that wasn't flashy, just deeply entrenched. Big estate, never married, wore a watch worth more than our car. He'd show up with perfectly timed gifts and one pointed observation about your life choices. The family always said he had no one else, no kids, no close family, just us. And by us, they mostly meant Jake. Jake started spending time with him in college. Golf outings, business dinners. He'd come home with little tokens from Uncle Carl, a tie clip, a leather wallet, once a new laptop for his classes. My dad encouraged it, of course, called it networking. Said Jake was building important connections. I didn't go often. Not because I wasn't allowed, but because I was never really included. I'd go maybe once a year, if Uncle Carl insisted. We'd sit in his library and talk about history or politics or the stubborn leak in his boat dock. I liked him. He was direct, a little gruff, but he listened. He never told me to smile more or asked why I wasn't on a career path like Jake's. When I turned 21, he gave me a vintage compass and said, "Every person should have something to help them find their own true north." I still have it. Never used it. You can probably see where this is going. Uncle Carl passed away a few months back. Quietly, in his study. Jake was the one who got the call. I found out through a text chain. He'd been unwell, apparently. Not that anyone thought to mention it. But the family wasn't grief-stricken. They were anticipatory. Polite, but reserved, the way people are when they're waiting for a transaction to clear, because everyone knew what was coming next. The reading of the will. It was in his lawyer's office, a place with too much air conditioning and expensive art. Jake was dressed for a board meeting. My dad wore a blazer. My mom wore her best dress. Mark was there, which was audacious, given his only connection to Uncle Carl was eating the food at our family functions. I wore a simple black dress. We all sat there while an assistant passed out glasses of water. And the lawyer, a severe woman named Ms. Gable, opened a file and adjusted her glasses like she was about to deliver a verdict. And then she read it. The will. The whole thing. The estate, the holdings, the stocks, the property. All of it. Left to me. Not divided, not shared. To me. The silence in that room was absolute. Jake's face went completely blank. My mom's hand flew to her mouth. My dad made a small, choked sound. And Mark, ever helpful, said, "Huh? Her?" Ms. Gable didn't pause. She just turned the page and kept reading. The rest was boilerplate. Charitable donations, instructions for his things, but none of it registered. Not after that. Afterward, we stood by the cars in the parking garage. Nobody spoke. I was numb, trying to process it all. Had I heard correctly? Was this some kind of test? Jake was the first to break. He didn't even look at me. What did you do to him? He asked. And I just stared because I hadn't done anything. I hadn't manipulated or campaigned. I hadn't even considered the possibility of being a major beneficiary, let alone the sole one. I felt shocked, then guilty, then deeply, deeply uncomfortable. They stopped talking to me after that. Meals were quiet. I'd walk into the living room and the conversation would just stop. It was like I'd contracted a contagious disease. I was a problem living in their house. So, I decided to solve it. I started drafting the letter, the one I planned to give them on Christmas, the one I sealed with a red wax stamp and put in my cardigan pocket before dinner. I wasn't trying to be a hero. Let's be clear. I wasn't trying to purchase affection or broker some grand peace. Honestly, I think I just didn't want to be the reason our family fell apart. Because even though I didn't ask for it, didn't fight for it, didn't play the game, they made it abundantly clear that my winning was a personal offense. And yeah, a stupid, hopeful part of me still wanted to believe we could be fixed. That if I proved I wasn't selfish, that I was better than this, they'd finally see me. That maybe they'd remember I was their daughter, their sister. So I spent nights at my desk writing that letter, doing the math, working out a split that was more than fair. I kept a part for myself. Uncle Carl had chosen me, after all, but the rest I divided up neatly. A large sum for my parents to finally retire the mortgage and take the trip they always talked about. A significant amount for Jake, enough to feel like a victory, not enough to fund a lifetime of bad investments, and even a small piece for Mark because I'm either a pushover or an optimist and the jury's still out. It wasn't just a letter. It was a peace treaty. I sealed it in that off-white envelope, added the wax seal because some naive part of me thought this would be a beautiful moment, and put it in my pocket. I was going to give it to them after dessert. No big speech, just a quiet offering. But the week before Christmas, the mood changed. At first, it was subtle. Jake started asking pointed questions. Had the lawyer mentioned tax implications? Was the property liquid? Had I spoken to an estate planner yet? He asked like someone asking about the weather before a hurricane. Then it got more direct. Dad pulled me aside while I was taking out the trash and said, "I just hope you remember that Carl was a family man. He wouldn't want this to cause a rift." I nodded and said, "I know. That's why I'm handling it quietly." He smiled a thin smile. "Good. You'll do the right thing. The family thing." And I said, "I already am." But that wasn't enough. Later, I overheard Mom on the phone, maybe with her sister, saying, "Oh, Lily has it all now, but she'll come around. It's family. She has to share." Like it was a foregone conclusion, like not handing it over would be an act of betrayal. By Christmas Eve, Jake was accidentally leaving real estate listings for lake houses on the kitchen counter. Mark spent the afternoon talking about how they could finally build a proper home gym, which was ironic since A, it's not their house, and B, my old room is currently where they store the treadmill. They were planning their future with my inheritance, and I was just the inconvenient beneficiary. And I still held on to that letter. I still thought maybe if I give them this, it will fix everything. Then Christmas Day arrived. The table was set for 5. Jake did the decorations this year. Something with too many lights and a cinnamon candle that gave me a headache. I helped cook because no one else would, and I can't stand the thought of dry turkey. Mom didn't compliment the food, but she did mention the potatoes could use more salt. Dinner started off tense, which was normal. Nobody really looked at me until they did. At some point, Jake turned to me with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "So," he said. "Made any big plans yet?" "For what?" I asked, playing dumb. "The money," he said, as if it was obvious. "For those who need it spelled out." I took a breath. I'm still considering my options. He laughed a short, harsh laugh. Well, just remember who put in the time with him, who built that relationship. I said nothing. Mom added her 2 cents. It's not that we want anything, darling, but it would be a shame if you didn't recognize everything we've done for you. I was about to answer, still trying to keep the peace, when Jake decided to go for the jugular. Seriously, he said, leaning back in his chair. I don't get it. What did you even talk about with him? You saw him, what, twice a year? There it was. The core belief, finally said out loud. You think I manipulated him? I asked, my voice low. No one answered. My hand was in my pocket, my fingers on the edge of the envelope. I had written that letter. I had planned this moment of grace. And they were ready to evict me over an inheritance I never asked for. That's when Jake delivered the line. We've all decided it's time for you to go. Just like that. As if I was a tenant whose lease was up. No one spoke up. No one said, that's not what we agreed. I reached into my cardigan and pulled out the envelope, held it up. They all leaned in, their eyes hungry. I smiled. All right then, I said. I guess you won't be needing this. And I tore it in two. I watched the comprehension dawn on Jake's face in slow motion. I dropped the pieces on the table, stood up, and walked toward the stairs. They were still frozen, still processing, when I got to my room and started shoving things into my duffel bag. Let them panic. Let them scream. They have no idea what they just lost, but they will. When I left the house, the cold air was a shock, but it felt purifying. I was halfway down the driveway when I heard the door burst open behind me. Lily. Jake's voice, sharp and angry. I assume they've read the torn letter by now. They would have put it together. I didn't stop walking. Lily, are you insane? You're really leaving? I reached the sidewalk before he caught up. He was in his socks, shivering in his stupid button-down. You don't have to be so dramatic, he said, trying to sound calm. We were just stressed. I turned to face him. Stressed that I existed, or stressed that I wasn't immediately handing over a check? His face tightened. You didn't earn that. We were the ones who were there for him, he spat out. Who took care of him, who waited for him to die so you could go on a shopping spree? I said, my voice flat. The porch light flicked on. Dad stepped out, pulling on a coat. Honey, he called, his voice strained. We didn't mean it. Jake was speaking for all of you, I stated, loud enough for them both to hear. Dad came down the steps. Look, things got heated, he said. But don't ruin your future over a fight. I stared at him. My future? He didn't even flinch. You'll need our help. The world is hard. Families fight, but we stick together. I almost laughed. You told me to get out and never come back. That was before we knew, he blurted out, then stopped himself. Before you knew what? I asked. That I was about to solve all your problems? That you just set fire to the life raft I was about to throw you? I don't need a ride, I said. I'm calling a friend. You're just going to walk away from your family? Jake said, hugging himself against the cold. You don't owe us even a conversation? I looked at him, at my dad on the steps, at the shadow of my mom in the doorway. You made it very clear I didn't have a place at that table. And with that, I turned and walked away. I didn't stop until I turned the corner. They didn't follow. Not that night. A few days later, they mobilized the extended family. Aunts, uncles, cousins I hadn't heard from in years, all suddenly very concerned about respect and family duty. Texts started pouring in. Some were passive-aggressive, hope you're okay. Heard there was a misunderstanding. Some were direct, your parents are devastated. How could you? One aunt even sent a long email about honoring my father and mother. She addressed it to Lily. I ignored it all. My friend Sarah let me crash on her sofa. I offered to pay rent. She refused. You're not staying forever, she said. Just until you remember you don't need their permission to exist. I thought I already knew that. Then the knock came. 3 days after Christmas, just as it was getting dark, I was alone. I opened the door and there she was, standing on the welcome mat like she hadn't exiled me days before. Hi, my mom said. I didn't move. You shouldn't know where I am. Aunt Carol told me, she said, as if that made it okay. You can't just ghost us, Lily. It's not right. I stared at her. You came all the way here to tell me that? She peeked past me into the apartment. We just want to understand what happened. What you were thinking. You read the letter, I said. You know exactly what I was thinking. But why would you offer it, she asked, her voice getting higher, and then just rip it up? It's so hurtful. Because you told me to leave. We were angry. We didn't mean it. Not after we realized, she cut herself off. Realized what? I asked. That I was about to sign away my inheritance to placate you? That you just torched the olive branch I was holding out? I started to close the door. I don't want us to be estranged, she said quickly. I paused. This isn't estrangement. This is consequences. She didn't have a reply for that. Then I remembered. I had one more thing. I reached into my bag on the floor. I got something, I said. A letter, she said, squinting. From Uncle Carl, I added. His lawyer forwarded it. That got her attention. I pulled it out. Carefully folded, the paper thin. I didn't hand it to her. I read it aloud. Lily, by the time you read this, I expect there will be some discontent. Pay it no mind. When people feel entitled to what isn't theirs, they often reveal their true character. I didn't leave my estate to you because you flattered me or out of pity. Quite the opposite. You were the only one who never treated me like an ATM or a project. You were honest. You were real. That authenticity meant more to me than all the obligatory golf games in the world. This isn't a reward. It's a launchpad. I am giving you the one thing everyone deserves but few ever get, a real choice. The choice to build a life that is wholly, unapologetically yours. You don't owe anyone explanation for how you use it. You never did. Use it wisely. Use it boldly. Use it to be happy. And if they don't understand that, well, that is their problem to solve, not yours. With great pride and belief in you, Carl. I looked up. My mom was white as a sheet. She understood. He knew who you were, I said. Even when you were all pretending to be someone else. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I gave her a small, final look. Tell Jake I'm not coming back. Then I closed the door. And this time, I locked it. A month later, I moved into a small studio apartment. It had noisy pipes and a view of a brick wall, but the lock on the door was solid, and the space was entirely my own. I didn't go on a wild spending spree. I could have. But I wanted to be smart. I bought a very comfortable armchair and a sturdy desk. My friend Sarah helped me hang a small shelf. I put one thing on it, Uncle Carl's letter. Sometimes I read it, not because I doubt myself, but because it reminds me that I was seen for who I am, and that was enough. I hear through the family grapevine that things aren't great at home. Jake's latest business venture fell through. Mark moved out. My parents are talking about downsizing. Apparently, the house feels too big and too quiet now. I don't miss them. Not really. I miss the idea of the family I wished I had. But now I know the difference. And knowing the difference is the first step toward building something real. Sometimes I still wonder if I was an idiot for writing that letter in the first place. For thinking, even for a second, that giving them money would make them love me. Or maybe it wasn't stupid. Maybe it was just the last, desperate act of a hope that finally had to die. Either way, I tore it up. And I haven't regretted it for a single second. But still, I want to know. What do you think? Did I do the right thing? Or was I just as naive as they believed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you connected with this story of finally choosing yourself, don't forget to subscribe for more.